In today's episode, I welcome Sharon Avraham to The Road to Connection. Sharon is founder of the second biggest regional Burning Man festival outside of America. He's a core community member at The Garden, Portugal, and he has founded and runs an organization that supports Israelis and Palestinians to come together and run their own projects. And in today's episode, we talk about those things and we talk about much more, including how to create emergent, co-creational spaces and events and the power of that as an introvert. And we talk about how art and studying art and producing art can be a powerful means of self-introspection and transformation and questioning indoctrination. And we discuss the structure of and some frameworks around how we can look at what it's like for communities to evolve over time, and much more besides. This is the Road to Connection podcast. I believe it's somewhere between episode 6 and 10. I forget because we have a bit of a publishing backlog. This episode was recorded a few months ago in Portugal. Please enjoy this episode with Sharon Avraham. Welcome to the Road to Connection podcast. I'm here with Sharon Avraham. Sharon, excited to have this conversation. Yeah, we've been living together for a couple of weeks at this strange, crazy place that I've suddenly started calling my home. And I'm curious to talk about a bunch of stuff around this place and your journey that led you here. And we had a little conversation the other day, which was really interesting to me about how your nature of wanting to build stuff in the world that brings people together intersects with maybe a slight sort of introversion in you. And I was like, I don't know if that's the right framing, we can touch on that. But there was a really interesting sort of philosophy you have around that and how you go about navigating that. So that's something I really want to touch on here. Maybe start by asking, what is this place and what do you do here?
It's a good question. What is this place? I think it's a platform. It's a place to gather. It's a place that people who seek connection, who seek to be close to nature, to be nourished while they work on their stuff, while they meet cool people, while they get to grow a little bit and experience community in this ephemeral community that's always changing and evolving. Yeah.
How long have you been here?
This round, I think 2 months now.
And your first round was a few years ago.
And it's been 7 years.
7 years? I didn't realize this place was that old.
It's not. It's been 7 years that I'm collaborating
With Andre?
With Andre, yeah, and with the team that's around this place.
So what's that been like? How did that begin? And what's that journey been like with that team? And who's what's going on with it?
Well, the team is also ephemeral.
Is there some sense of permanence in it? I guess you've been in it for 7 years now, in and out.
I've been in and out. I've been more than, more of a friend than a colleague. Yeah, but it's a great journey. It's I'm passionate about bringing people together, and the people here are passionate about bringing people together.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. This is where I want to be at the moment.
Yeah, so Andre bought this place, which is 20 acres of land? Something like that?
9 hectares.
9 hectares. And just people began to increasingly sort of, it's growing in terms of the amount of people who are coming here and what it's becoming, would you say? Is that a fair description?
I think so, yeah. And yeah, I can say that my role in this place is, trying to bring the community together, to give value to this place, to the people that are here, to create some unique programs, to bring good artists over here that can really get nourished. And also nourish the people that are here and inspire, co-inspire each other.
I'm curious how you describe the values and the vision of this place. You kind of mention artists as being a key component and bringing people together and giving this chance for connection. Is there a clear sense of values and vision here? That's explicitly kind of noted, or how's that evolving?
I think there's there's all kinds of cultures, and in many ways we're used to this like very like Western, American like vision, mission, values. So I don't think this place is exactly there yet. I think this place is still trying to understand what is the drive behind things, what is the engine, what is in the core of this place that really kind of slowly signals to the rest.
Yeah.
I can tell you like my values here that I try to embody. Like definitely like what I try to bring here is a sense of community. Community and honesty and transparency that hopefully nourish the system. It's a challenge, it's a challenge to like be together on a piece of land, live together, eat together, sleep together, work together. Like that brings a lot of challenges, and this is what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Actually, like, okay, how can we have it all, right?
Great.
How can we just like move from this very artificial life that we compartmentalize different aspects of us, right? There's the work me and the life me and the friends me and like the marriage me, and why is that?
There's a sense that like fusing those things into just one life is my sense is that's how like most of our ancestors for thousands of years lived. We were tribes, and for 99.9% of human history we lived together, and we shared our lives 24/7. And we don't, and like the modern world has created a system where it's really hard to feel like emotionally healthy, relationally nourished, and we live in these little boxes and we try to like get all these things met, but they are, as you point towards, they're almost like these separate sections of how we live our lives.
Exactly. So, we all indoctrinized to fit into the capitalist system. We all have our role to play, and then we get our salary in the end of the month, and then like we go and we feed the system, and we go and we consume pleasure, content, and I think of course we do still live in that system over here, right? Like people pay to stay here, people get paid to work here. But I feel good and I feel honored to be steering this ship into something that feels good and that encapsulate, right, all of these different elements to a life that is worth living.
Yeah. You alluded to something earlier, I think, which I've noticed here, which is like there's a sense that this place is, experiment doesn't feel like quite the right word, it feels a bit too clinical, but there's like a sense that it's like being discovered as it goes, like what does this place want to be and need to be. And so maybe part of the values is like an openness to not being too structured too soon or something like that. That's something I noticed here, and I'm wondering, does that resonate, or does that not quite describe it?
Can you elaborate or focus
So I think in the beginning you were like, this place it's like an evolution. People are coming here, they come in and out, we're feeling out what this place is still, perhaps. And it's like it's a discovery process.
Yeah, like everything.
And so there's like, we're not just like, right now, this is our value A, value B, value C, value C, this is how we do things here. It's this kind of like this opportunity in very small scale communities, as opposed to like living in a city, to have a sort of almost like a lawlessness that like people can do what they want when they want, and like we can trust that each other here is like we're living with kindness.
I think that the experiment here is like, okay, how do you create a container that is nourishing, that is just enough boundaries to feel freedom while you're here, and in different levels, right? And the experience that the residents have here, and then like our experience as a team working here.
I found it I felt very free, and I sensed like, for me, I've only been here 2 weeks, and for me it's been a process of like discovering what do I actually who do I want to be? How do I want to be in this place that is quite different from, I've been in community quite a few times, but this feels, quite different from anywhere else I've been.
In what way?
I think part of it is that like there's quite a lot of land, and that changes something psychologically, that I can just like wander into the woods or something at any moment, and I can really be on my own. And there's also like no strong expectation of me turning up to anything at any point. And so there's meals shared, and most people are at most meals. A lot of people are at the evening events, but there's no like, you really need to be at this thing. And so there's a sense of, I can kind of flow as much as I want, or I can adhere to structure as much as I want. And so it's like feeling out how I want to interact with the system, if there is a system. I guess there's some kind of like system, but it's like, that for me is an evolution of how I want to be here, and it's an experiment. Yeah, and I'm wondering how that's been for you. Like, how's your time in this community? So you've been here, how many times have you been here now?
I've been coming and going for 3 years since this place is around. I've been here a good amount of time.
What's changed about, like, if you look back to the first time you were here and how it is now, how does that contrast?
It's exactly, I think, this process. So, like, the structure is slowly forming.
Yeah.
You know, lessons are being learned. More and more people are kind of coming in and out. It definitely feels less chaotic over time.
Interesting. Yeah, what was that chaos like before?
Manifest in many ways, you know, drama.
Interpersonal drama.
Yeah.
Conflict,
right? When people, I don't know if you learned about, do you know about Tuckman's theory of group development?
Not really, no.
So you have the forming, storming, norming, and performing.
Okay.
And that's, well, as Tuckman says, this is the natural phases that every group is going to experience.
Cool. Can you repeat those 4 stages one more time?
Forming, storming, norming, and performing. Okay?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, can you break that down for us and get some detail? Yeah, like explain that whole step system.
Like when the group comes together, everyone's excited. Here we are, we're together, we're doing that thing. It feels amazing. We're all like very lucky to be doing this thing, and we're here and we're together and like we're excited and let's do it. And that, you know, takes a certain amount of time. Really depends on the conditions.
Right.
But then, at some point, the group moves into a new phase, and in that phase, the storming phase, people are trying to understand like what's each other's roles. People step on each other's feet, right? People like I'm doing this, no, I'm doing that, and then the storm.
This is the storm coming. People are like pushing. There's like been a little bit of a formation, and then there's like, oh, people don't want it quite like this, and we need to like push against.
Yeah, because we don't understand like what's people's strong sides, what's people's weaknesses, like where does everyone fit, and in this place there's drama. And people fight, and like the group can fall apart.
Yeah, that's a dangerous moment in a community's existence.
Fall apart. Like the thing is that this is a never-ending cycle. Action. It's not that you reach a point.
Right.
You're going through every new team member, every new season, every new group of residents. Like that's life.
Right.
That's the cycle. Like right, everything cycles. And then in the storming part, the group can fall apart. But if the group kind of gets to pass on to the next phase, that is where most people actually leave.
They leave in stage 3, which is
like this is, you know, in this
stage 3 is called
performing,
norming.
Norming,
okay.
Yeah. And then, right, when the group succeeds to pass through the storm. And then people leave, people that don't fit in, you know.
Right.
And sometimes it's a pain point. There's maybe drama, there's sadness. People feel like
this thing doesn't work for me.
They got wrong, or like it doesn't work for them. You know, it really depends.
There's a rift which cannot be healed sometimes. There's like, because of that conflict, if there's...
I'm sure, like,
Yeah.
you know, we're human, we all experience that.
Right.
And then you go to the norming phase. So usually in the norming phase, okay, like people kind of know what they're doing, they know what they're good at, but actually the conflicts get worse. Because then, you know, this is where like, okay, like, you know, this is what I want to do. This is the path I want to walk in, and like sometimes the values don't align, or the action plans like, don't align, and the conflicts. Like, so if you had like 6 people fighting on the same role, you might now have 2 people on the same responsibility, you know? And if the group manage to go through that phase, usually more people leave. And then you get to step into the performing phase, where actually people differences and the way they see differently like things is perceived as an advantage and not a disadvantage. And then the group is in the performing phase of the group development, and that is relatively a smooth sailing situation.
And it means performance in terms of like the thing is doing stuff rather than like performing on stage. It's like the kind of like something, it has good performance, that kind of meaning, that interpretation of the word performance. Yeah. And so what stage would you say this place has gone through that cycle already, or is it in its first iteration of that cycle, and where is it?
I think if you look at the smaller, you know, on the kind of macro level, it's every like month or few months period is definitely going through the same cycle. And then in the overarch macro level, I'd say like this is definitely still in phase 2.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how is it to be in phase 2 for you? How does it feel?
I don't know if I'm here for enough time just to be in that meta level, you know, it's just an observation as a friend of the project for a while, like just working here recently. You know, we're all just like written in sand on the shoreline. So I'm trying to enjoy my time.
You mean that in the sense of like life is here and it's gone?
Yeah.
And how are you enjoying it here?
I think I'm feeling proud to be here, and that's a lot.
It feels like you're a pivotal figure in this community, and like people look to you for structure and a sense of like checking in with you a bunch about like what if what they're thinking and doing is like valuable and wanted and stuff like that. Does that resonate?
Is that like an observation?
It's an observation. It's a loose one. I'm curious how accurate that is, and if that feels like something you feel and notice.
Sometimes, yeah. Yeah, like, you know, like this is a dream that tries to manifest itself through many people in our generation. This is how I feel, and like I want to experience this. Sitting, and I grew up in a community not very different than this one, but like I want to experience this in the time that I have. I want to be around people. I want to have richness. I wanna have intimacy. I wanna have creativity around me in my life that is not transactional.
What's the thing it is if it's not transactional?
It's cultural. It's human. You know, it's just human.
Yeah, it's more deeply connected to one another.
Yeah, like everything, right? You can say nature is everything, and we are nature, and the monetary transactions that we do are also not separate, right? But I feel that's a very narrow way that human interaction is communicated by. because it's all transactions, right? But I feel there's expansiveness in a situation that we sit here because we want to, right? Like, I feel like in this exchange between us, the value that I'm getting is very personal. It's not, hey, I'm gonna give you my time, and then like you give me some money, so I'll have more money to do whatever. Like,
Right.
I feel like cool, like I'm being seen, I'm being listened to, and like I get to share a story, I get to connect to another human, and that's what life is about.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It feels like it's almost, we just don't have a better word than transaction, but transaction describes like a monetary transaction in a, right, you're working at a startup and you're getting a salary or whatever, but here the transaction is like a win-win exchange of love.
And I think that's what we're designed for.
Yeah, right.
We're designed for win-win.
Yeah, exactly.
This is our
win-win games are what we need to be playing.
yeah. This is our uniqueness as humans.
Yeah.
Our ability to collaborate.
So yeah, I wonder if do a little segue to a slightly different topic. When we were talking the other day, we were talking about festivals that you've been a part of and like how you intersect with those and what your role is in those. Yeah, I wonder if you could give a little summary of like, what were we speaking about the other day? And do you remember what the question was that I asked you that sparked that conversation? I can't. It was. Can you remember it? I can't quite remember. It was something like. No, damn it. I feel like it was something to do with like introversion and extroversion, and something to do with.
Yeah, I can say, like I grew up as an only child.
As a what? Sorry.
I grew up as an only child.
As an only child. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of loneliness in that.
Yeah, I hear that.
And from within this loneliness, there's, at least in me, there was this kind of curiosity to so what's out there. I feel like in my inner circle, there's not a lot happening. Like, let's see what's happening out there.
Yeah.
And definitely that sent me off to Burning Man.
When was the first?
When I was 21.
21. You went off to Burning Man in Nevada.
Yes.
Yeah. You grew up in Israel.
I did.
Yeah.
Yes. And over there it was quite an experience that really threw me to like the possibilities of co-created culture. Like, how does it look exactly where we are right now? How does it look when there's a container that allows human interaction to be kind of less conditioned?
Yeah, I see that. Like most people live in the world they were born into, and it's very difficult for most people to kind of question that. And it's just like, oh, we just have this default path that we're on. We live in a house with our parents, and then we get married, and we get a house there, and we get a job, and we have a salary, and we go through this life, and we have a monogamous relationship, and we have children, and like all those things can be great. I think they're like, but I think most people aren't able to. They just don't have the tools to question it, and if they do, they just have no idea how to get out of that. And I've not been to Burning Man, but I've looked at it for many years, and it seems to me one example of a really wonderful experiment that, or maybe experiment's the wrong word. It's like it's something that's happening, but it's a phenomenon that allows people this opportunity to say, hey, we're just going to set up this thing for a week where we rewrite the script, and like you can be a part of like that process. And I'm curious, when you went in there the first time, what was your experience?
I think like I don't want to tell another Burning Man story.
Yeah.
They're boring. But I can say that I've learned the power of a community that creates a festival, that creates a community, that creates a festival. And this co-creative model that I've seen executed on such a big scale really inspired me to take that back to my personal, my professional, my like social activist life.
Yeah. So you grew up in this only child kind of situation, and there was loneliness in that, and then there was at some point you went to Burning Man. I'm wondering, was there like just like a feeling of like pervasive loneliness until that broke kind of the mold for you, or what was your journey with like finding a way out of feeling
So
lonely?
it was like I grew up in quite a socialist country at that time. Being part of youth movements, of school, like a pretty tight community. Like
Okay.
it's not a community in this sense.
Right.
It's a village. It's different, but like
Was it a kibbutz or
not exactly. But yeah, I had all kinds of opportunities. It's not a binary situation, you know.
Right. Yeah. So when we were talking the other day, you were talking about how you started a festival, is it? Or
A bunch, yeah.
you started the Israel Burn.
Yes.
Oh, damn, excellent. Yeah. So, and then you were saying that like when you create these events, often you actually don't have as much enthusiasm as many perhaps to like get beat in amongst all the crowds, and there's like a different relationship to it.
I like getting people together. I like to be in community. I like to be in creativity with other people. I'm not necessarily the person you're going to see in the middle of the dance floor, but that's just one part of creating these spaces, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, part of this channel is like an attempt to speak to people who are like feeling a bit stuck and isolated and think they need to be like this sort of extrovert to get out there and find connection, and there's like so many ways of having human connection.
Yeah, so like I can say definitely growing up as this like, shy child, teenager that like didn't know how to fit in around him. Kind of understand like what you ask yourself a lot, like why do you do this podcast, for example, like how do I generate value to the people around me so I'm loved, right? Like, that's kind of what everyone does. And there's all these kind of different strategies that we're implementing just to not feel alone in the end of the day. And yeah, for me it was to create these spaces.
Yeah. And did you have a natural propensity for like creating gatherings? How did you pull that? Because a lot of people wouldn't have the skills to pull together. Like,
I don't know. Like I grew up on this farm,
yeah,
and I had space. So like many times, as a kid, like, oh well, we're gonna do a bonfire, or like, kind of. I was the person who always had a little bit more space than other people.
So it was kind of it became part of like who you are to just like gather people together and yeah. And so it started as like little bonfires when you were a teenager.
Yeah.
What were they like?
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, what went down at those?
Yeah, I think like definitely as a teenager, like I was like, okay, cool, I have the space. We can like there's space to go and play Dungeons and Dragons, and it's a place to do a bonfire and like get wasted for the first time. And be away from like the family, the parents. My dad was always super chill, so like it felt like I kind of grew up in this like lawless situation, like that allows me like a lot of freedom to examine who I am.
What did you discover?
Myself.
Yeah, what did you learn about yourself? In relation to like, yeah, that cause I love the framing you gave a minute ago around like, yeah, we do things in the world because we want to be loved, and like, yeah, I love that, and like part of this, like, I think that's at the core of everything really, and it's funny how like we all do that in very different ways.
Yeah, I think like maybe going back to your question is. How do you get to be like an introvert that produce big festivals, right? And I think like the beauty in these like kind of Burning Man style events, these co-creative spaces that you get to create something that's more than a party. And you get to plan it, and you get to build a set and like make art installations and like design spaces or workshops, and you get to be a highly contributing member without like being the best dancer or the best dresser, you know, like, or like the best like good looking person in the crowd. So
Don't know, man. Your locks are pretty foxy. That beard, yeah, your hair and your hair. I don't know.
well, but it wasn't my experience. Yeah, it wasn't my experience. You know, like being like a little bit more like heavy than most people, and like you see me now, and I'm like in the best shape I've been in years.
Brilliant. Well done, man.
But so you kind of, you know, you kind of like try to see like how do I work with what I got, and how do I generate value to these people around me, right? Because so they love me, like be attracted to me. I guess these are like the underlying things.
Yeah. And then there's this question of like, okay, I've built this thing, whether consciously or not, to like bring love into my life. And then it gets down to this micro of like, how do I interact with people in that environment such that I can actually like be in contact with that love? And for some, that's like dancing in the middle of the dance floor. And like, yeah, for you, what was that? And
so I got to be the person who started that. Right?
Yeah.
Like so.
Where did the connection show up in that?
There's this funny sticker that says I'm kind of famous at Burning Man.
That's what the sticker says.
Yeah, and like the beauty about these kinds of events, that everyone thinks that without them the event wouldn't happen. And they're all right.
Yeah.
Actually.
Right. You remove one person and it's a different event. Exactly. Because it's like this co-creational
So there's
thing.
a lot, this echo chamber that's creating a lot of thankfulness, you know, a lot of gratitude between the people.
Beautiful.
So to be one of the several people that co-created that thing, you get a lot of love, you get a lot of attention. People kind of come up to you and say thank you, and that's, wow, I'm seen. You know, like I remember I had this habit in the first years of the festival that every time I felt lonely or sad, I would like kind of try to find like the tallest like installation I can like kind of climb on or something, and just like usually it was like dusk or dawn, and just go up and just like look around at all the people walking around, you know, alone, in groups, in pairs, and imagine how there's like a little piece of me in their experience, you know, because if I haven't been that person doing that initiative, and like this event wouldn't maybe happen. And it's not saying that me, Sharon, created this, right? Birthed this to life. It's just I was part of the group that created the critical mass that allowed it to happen.
Yeah.
Because there was a bunch of us, right? And it's never like one person cannot start a movement.
Right.
But then there was a certain time that enough of people like were brave enough and consistent enough who, like, I said like, hey, yeah, come to my farm and let's imagine a project. And someone else said like, oh, like I have this pub in Tel Aviv and we can like meet here every Tuesday and do like silly Burning Man thing. One other person was like this wedding producer, and he's like, oh, like, yeah, I know how to produce stuff.
Oh, nice. Yeah. And so you're just gathering these people together who have their own skill sets, and together you use that in the best way you can.
All of these summed up to a critical mass that started the movement.
Yeah. I loved what you said when the story you just told about climbing the artwork and looking over. I felt like it was actually like absent of ego. It was like a sense of I created this, but it was just like that sentiment could be given in a really egotistical way, and I felt instead it was just like, oh, here's a way to just like feel into how my love like imbues the environment around me. And I think a super inspiring message to like, if you can't, people can just get out there and make stuff happen, and that cultivates a space for love to emerge. It's just so beautiful. And yeah, it's funny, I forgot that you had been the instigator for Burning Man, because you like, I don't know, I don't think you mention it very much, and it's like, I had to brought you to get out of you, and it's like, I think that's kind of indicative of it, like being this non-egotistical kind of thing as well.
But it's more complicated than that,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially when you like around people a lot, and like you get interviews with you get to maybe mask, like, I want to be presented in a certain, like, everyone has ego.
Yeah.
Everyone has it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is ego?
Yeah.
My perception of self. Like,
Yeah.
it's not bad or good.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something I need to aspire not to have. Like that. I try my best. I try my best.
I guess I see this risk that, like, when someone is like a real figurehead in a movement, they sometimes there's a propensity to fall into just like using that in an unhealthy way.
I'm sure I did.
Yeah.
I'm sure I did.
Yeah. Is that an ongoing like ongoing work? Yeah. Yeah, super interesting phenomenon. As we get more social status, how do we navigate that in a way that's healthy and connective and supportive of those around us? Because
I think, like, try our best to be honest, right? And this is actually where I'm super thankful that, like, my training is in arts. Like, I'm an artist, and as a young person, when you go to art school, like, you face all of these people that what they do is question reality around them and themselves all the time, right? And you go deeper and you go deeper, and you question and you question and you question yourself, and you're being questioned by these teachers all the time. And like, I had like, at least in my school, like, my teachers didn't sugarcoat anything. Like, it was very natural that, like, at presentations, like, half of the class like burst into tears and leave the class, because you put your heart on the table and then it's getting chopped.
yeah, so studying art and having it critically examined as like a process of personal growth, but also sounds like, wow, super challenging. Did you ever, like, were you one who left in the intensity of feeling?
I'm an Israeli man. In the end of the day, like, we're built quite tough.
Yeah. Yeah, how do you see that process of like art school as a mode of like personal growth? Is it?
It was huge.
It was good.
It was huge.
Huge.
Yeah, huge part of it. Also, like, I've been, being in art school and then simultaneously being in leadership on this like big movement that's being built, and also bringing, like, kind of creating my presentations and my art on that movement.
The Burning Man movement.
The Midburn, yeah.
What's it called, sorry?
Midburn.
Midburn is the name of the band that you started in Israel.
Yeah, so it was interesting, it was interesting. Like, I remember putting up some photos and, like, one of the presentations, and, like, there was a few photos from, like, this orgy that happens, and, like, my teacher looked at it and he's like, hey man, like, do you think you guys invented orgies? Well, you should have seen Tel Aviv in the 70s.
So he was like cutting to something in you that was, he saw that you were like, we're doing this thing, and he's like, it's nothing special, you're just doing what other people have done before.
Exactly. And then taking that in a very early phase, understanding that I shouldn't maybe drink my own Kool-Aid.
Nice. Great to have teachers like that. I guess you could rock up in an art school and not have teachers who are going to critically examine you so well.
Exactly. So relatively fast I became like the critic also, and within the leadership of the movement. So that really allowed me to have this kind of ongoing conversation, because I did this thing. I experienced this huge ego trip of, like, leading a movement, and then being young enough to still, like, be a sponge and take this into class and like being criticized, and then like I was living in my farm and like the community was gathering over there, so like share with the community, get the feedbacks also that not necessarily everyone else would from the leadership would get, and then having this very like looking back, this very nourishing cycle of like, okay, criticism is not bad, it doesn't feel good when you get it, but like it's not a bad thing, it's actually essential.
Great. Yeah, really important process.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you've like taken that kind of role as the critic on in community and like directed it at the people you're supporting now.
First and for all, like I did use these tools to kind of like unlearn the like crazy indoctrination that the Israelis go through, and like see behind the concrete curtain of the shit that's happening in the background, like the violent occupation of a whole other people. So that's like, this was a huge journey.
Is that a sort of, is other arts student world and the artists in Israel kind of, they're on that similar path of looking beyond what you're told in school?
Oh, it's very common in art and academia, people are leftists. Right? Like you learn to question, and if you question, you question the power structures of where you live.
Right. There was, I'm not sure if it was you or someone else was talking about some group that brings together Israelis and Palestinians and other people from the Arab world in some project. It was something that you were mentioning, right? Yeah. Can you remind me what that was?
So I think the one thing that I'm mostly excited in the last years is using these tools of community building, of coming together in a co-created way to heal,
Yeah.
To heal, to connect people outside of this very specific social structure that actually indoctrinates them to kill each other, to hate, to see themselves as separate. Like this is like where I live. The race that you're from, the origin where you come from, like indicates how you're going to live your life.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the mission of our species this century we have to find a way to come together across these differences of belief and about one another and about ideology. If we're to not destroy ourselves, we're just too powerful as a species now that we either tear ourselves apart or we come together.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of small steps to take along the way.
Yeah.
And for me, all of this questioning brought me, in the end of the day, to question how my society is built.
Yeah.
And to look beyond the indoctrination that Israelis get and see this huge gap and this occupation, this apartheid my society is inflicting upon another society, and to try to create cultural spaces that brings us together, to create maybe the new identity that can heal that place.
Which projects have you been involved with other projects other than the Burn that have involved people from wildly different cultural backgrounds? Yeah. Can you speak to those?
So I can encapsulate all of this in a way that's like, this is what I do. I create social spaces, cultural spaces, community spaces that allows people to meet each other on a relatively level field, that they can come, like at least that like they can come together, they could co-create. Everyone comes with their own experience and baggage and everything, but
Yeah.
like at least like here we're together. We're not equals because no one is equal, but we're together.
Yeah.
And like there's a certain place, there's a certain time, there's like a budget sometimes, right? And like we get to create this thing together, and we get to hold space for others in a way that we try not to bring in the existing power structures to dictate how we relate to each other.
What kinds of tensions have emerged in those environments? I imagine they're difficult to navigate at times. It's a lot of intense pain there.
It's a whole other conversation, you know, but yeah, it's harsh. It's harsh. It's real. Like it's not. It's, you know, and like I'll allow myself to be a little bit like sarcastic, maybe, or but there's tendency, and it's like I don't know. Let's call it social growth, spiritual growth, whatever spaces. Like, yeah, like I'm good and I'm connected and I want to work on myself and like all these like kind of this emphasis on the good. And when you're in that field, like you do the shadow work, you deal with shit. Like in that tiny piece of land, people like me, people coming from my community are indoctrinated to be killing machines. Like go to any Israeli here you see in the space. Ask them like, hey, do you remember the distance between the bullet holes on the target when you were 18 and like in the shooting range? And they all remember it. Right? The closer the distance, the better shooter you are. And like, you know, I was an infantry soldier. Someone else here was like a tank soldier. Like, and like especially now, right now, like with the genocide happening in Gaza, like so many of my friends are like putting on that uniform again and like kind of playing that character again. And then there's other people getting killed. And there's people from both communities, like, for fucking 70 years, like, killing each other.
What do you see as the...
So, like, that, I mean, that is alive between us when we meet.
Yeah.
And then there's all these kind of bypassing that's happening, right? Like, you know, there's a clear perpetrator and there's a clear victim, and like, there's like this history that everyone sees differently, and then there's different languages, and like, you know, some people say, but like, oh, but there's this book that tells us like this is our land, and then they say like, but we were here the whole time. Like, who cares about your book? We're here. This is our land. And then, you know, all the international powers that are in work, and then when you meet together, and then at the end of the day, it's there. And like now, especially, it's painful because it's the wound is like opened and widened, and I'm here. I'm like a peace activist that is checked out at the moment from that because it's too much.
That work of bringing people together is happening right now still in places.
Yeah,
and
it's happening everywhere. It's happening here.
Yeah, of like bringing Palestinians and Israelis to spend time in community working through those dark difficulties.
There's many people doing that. Like I co-founded an organization. Like this organization is working. There's all kinds of projects happening. Like
What's the organization
I'm bringing
name?
people. It's called Ilham. It means inspiration in Arabic.
And yeah, what's Ilham's, what's its objective? What's it trying to work on?
Exactly what I was sharing. Bringing people together, like inspiring.
Yeah. What kind of environment? So, what is like the invitation that is given to people to join? Like, what is the kind of thing that happens?
It's, you know, we try to move away from like this very masculine theory of change again. Values, vision, mission. We hold space. If you have a good idea, if you wanna try and help, and if you're not planning to harm anyone while you do it, like come to us and we'll support you and we'll give you logistical structure to bring your project to life. You know that in our organization that came to life through a research about Israelis and Palestinians doing ayahuasca together and sitting in ayahuasca ceremonies. It was about creating festivals together, and there's a documentary that is being worked under our organization of Israelis and Palestinians going to Northern Ireland.
Oh, nice. That documentary is being made right now.
Right now. Yeah. There's podcasts, all kinds of projects. Like also we try to work in a decentralized way, you know.
Yeah. That's fantastic. So you've got the infrastructure, the support to like help people whether they want to facilitate plant medicine ceremonies together, or run festivals, or do a creative project, or do something like really deep and introspective, like a documentary.
It's all about nourishing the system, right?
Yeah, love it.
It's not about like I'm going this way.
Yeah.
And like that's the way. My way is gonna be the way.
Right.
That's like you know, like in the peace industry, nimble. Like people sometimes joke about it, like, oh, you're gonna be the one that brings the peace, you know? Yeah. And no, it's all about feeding the system. It's all about nourishing the mycelium. Right? Like you never know. You never know. Well, there's no one mushroom, right? Right. There's no one mushroom that like kind of hits the main mushroom that feeds the whole mycelium. Yeah. The mycelium is underground and it supports the forest that it lives in. So I think also in an approach of you know, building organizations, communities, you're asking, right, like what's the values, the mission here. So like I think something we maybe, you know, like who am I to say anything, but maybe we're learning that it's not about who goes the fastest somewhere. Maybe it's all about nurturing the system to allow this like kind of multi-dimensional growth. Right? I don't know if you know a little bit about the works of Adrienne Marie Brown, that she talks about emergent strategies. She says, you know, strategy of change, it's not something you create, it's something that emerges when the system is ready and nourished. Yeah. And if you think about, I don't know, nature, if you think about all the water we see here around us, you have this aquifer, right? You have these groundwaters that you nourish and you feed, and eventually when they're full and they're abundant, then springs emerge and then water flows.
Is it that you see danger in like, I've got this strong vision, I'm going to make it happen as fast as possible, and we're going to try and do this solution? Is that like a thing that you see as like likely to fail, or a dangerous approach?
Everything fails, right? Everything fails. Everything that's like a kind of one way. Eventually. But I guess I see danger when people do that without. Can I have some? Yeah, thank you. I see danger when people do that without looking to the sides and seeing that people are like running next to them.
There's like, okay, have a vision, but really survey the landscape, understand the ecosystem, and rushing is kind of getting in the way of letting things emerge in the way they need to. You're kind of there's often an attempt, if you try and force a solution to like, to point specifically at like these grand scale risky disconnections that could destroy the world. If we try to just like solve the problem too fast, there's a risk in that.
Yeah. and you need to be willing to fail also.
Yeah. I mean, I love this approach of just bringing people together. I think like we're human beings, and when we are together with enough support and with enough time and spaciousness and a commitment to trying, we can work through shit. And it's just like literal physical disconnection is in the way of that. So like having a community and creating these spaces and being an infrastructure that supports things to pop up and be tried, I think that's really powerful. So I'm really happy that you're doing that. I'm really happy there's like people like you doing that in the world.
And also to be supportive to each other, like to praise each other, to push each other forward in a way that like we're doing right now, right? Like, why are you collecting these stories?
That's like a literal question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to show people what's possible, and just be. I think when I started this channel, I was doing the thing of just saying things from my perspective. Like, here's how you can like go out there and get connection. And it was all like how I've gone out there and got connection. And I was like, no, I need to understand other people more. Like, what works for different people. And so I just wanted to start having conversations about people's journeys and I realized I didn't even understand people's challenges. Like, what different challenges have people had in like living a life that have nourished them interpersonally. Ultimately, I care about a question related to this, really, which is the one I pointed to a couple of times, which is how, as a species, do we not tear ourselves apart? I think that's like the grandest scale. I think there's this spectrum from one to one. How do we just live harmoniously? How do we work through conflict and not just like disengage? I care about that on every scale, from the one to one up to the species-wide existential question of that. And I think it's really important, if I'm going to be talking about that and trying to build a platform where people engage, that I understand it from many different people's perspectives better than I do. So the podcast was really an attempt initially just for me to understand more, and through that process to share with others those insights. And I want to talk to people like you who are doing like really awesome shit in the world, because people like you are through that process learning a lot. And so I'm speaking to people who are founding communities and who are doing like really difficult, deep inner work. And yeah, there was something in talking to you the other day that just like, oh, there's some important stuff in here. Yeah, so thanks for the question. It's really, I'm doing this because I think it's really, really important.
That's the work, right? Like, we're creating the mycelium, like we're physically connecting and then appreciating each other, and then like broadcasting it through these like this like web that humans created to connect to each other all over the world. And that's the work, right? That's the work, to cross-pollinate, interconnectivity.
Yeah.
To join the struggles.
Yeah. It's really hard, man, because we're like, the way we live is so unbelievably alien to how most of our ancestors lived. So we've evolved to be something.
We know that.
And so
we feel that, there's a reason, there's a pushback. There's a reason, like our DNA is wired in a certain way, that I want to believe that if we're like going too far from our original design, like we're gonna rebalance at some point.
Yeah. It's challenging, isn't it? I think now we're so able to destroy ourselves, and we have so many different powerful dysfunctions, like these devices, or like fucking nuclear weapons, or pharmaceutical grade recreational substances, or like just all kinds of like really things which feed into things which helped us to survive, now feed into our dysfunctions. And it's challenging. It's challenging. And so I love what you're pointing towards, that we can like gently support the structures which push back against those dysfunctions. Yeah. Yeah, that feels like a nice round point. I wonder if there's anything else that feels like it needs to be touched on that's like related to these questions.
I feel complete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Sharon. That's excellent conversation.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it.
Time.
Where might is there? Do you have like an online presence that
Yeah.
people can find you in? And
ask me, I'll send you all the-
yeah, could you tell to the camera?
Like, yeah, if you if you put sharonavraham.com, you go to my website. If you search Elham
Yeah.
the day after, you'll find my NGO. If you search Midburn, you can see a little bit of what I did. You can search for my Instagram, weare3_studio. See some of my photography work. Yeah.
If people were to reach out to you, what would be a reason for them to do so? What would you want people to reach out to you for?
Collaboration.
Yeah.
How to make this world a better place. How to work together to bridge the gap that we have between us as humans, and like how to liberate the Holy Land from all this violence.
Beautiful. Thanks, brother. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Nice to get to know you like this.
Yeah, absolutely.